Okay, welcome back. So we've had a little bit of winter weather here, and unfortunately, I've not really had the opportunity to do another episode. So I apologize for the nearly 2 week lull, but hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody is warmed up, and maybe we'll make it out the other end of winter one of these days. Last time, for the life of me, I could not remember the name Amalek. Amalek was the ruler who snuck in behind, so to speak, of the Israelites as they were traveling and slaughtered the women, the children, the elderly, and the infirmed who were bringing up the rear. You know, generally in that type of strategy, that generally works, and that you remember when Jacob was going to meet his brother Esau, he divided the camp into several parts, feeling like if they slaughtered the first group, the second and third group could perhaps escape. So that's really a very rational way of looking at it. So one would expect that the people in the front would run into the problems, and therefore they put the people who could not travel as fast, etc., in the back. Unfortunately, Amalek figured that out and butchered so many people in that scenario. So what I was trying to say basically is, in Judaism we are told never to forget what he did, but at the same time we are to stamp out his name, or basically stamp out that type of evil. So I would just say that while I'm not going to do any stamping out, and I don't recommend any stamping out, I do think it unethical to take advantage of people who don't understand their own faith and try to convert them to a different religion. So that's where I was with that one. So I hope that further explains that. So tonight we're going to start with another sage. We are in a philosophy of Mitzvot. We are on page 35, and we are in the chapter called The Quest for the Meaning of Mitzvot. Maimonides, or the RamBan with an N at the end, has what is called the meta-rational view. So we'll continue reading page 35. The fundamentalist viewpoint is vigorously challenged by Maimonides, who asserts that each commandment has a reason and a purpose, as well as a benefit for man, quite apart from the reward which God grants for its observance. The sages did not mean to convey the notion that certain mitzvot are merely sovereign decrees, to be regarded as arbitrary and devoid of any reason. They are, he believes, divine commands whose object, while known to God, is not revealed to the people. The hukim, the laws which apparently have no reason, are God's secrets in the Torah, which the people cannot fathom by their reason, as they do with the mishpatim, or the other laws, which tend to make more sense. But all of them have a proper reason and a sound purpose. Furthermore, while the reason and beneficial purpose are not known to the common people, they are made manifest to the wise. God knows the need and object of the mitzvah which he commands, though he does not relate it to his people, except to the wise among his counselors. In corroboration of the latter assertion, Maimonides, there's 4 syllables in the name, Maimonides, notes that the patriarch Abraham, as intimated by the sages, learned the reasons for the commandments through divine inspiration. I would say that I definitely agree with that. The Torah tells us that Abraham kept God's commandments. And I would have to go back and look and see exactly which one it says he kept, whether it was the Hukim or the Mishpatim. But The idea being is that before the commandments were even given, Abraham knew them and Abraham performed them. So I think that's an important lesson, and this is part of the reason why he would be such a blessing to so many nations. The Hukim are thus viewed by Nehemiah as meta-rational precepts of a wholly esoteric nature. The RamBan differs basically from Rashi in the distinction to be drawn between the two classes of mitzvot. The Mishpatim, he agrees, are laws intended to preserve the life of man and society and to maintain peaceful relations among men. People readily recognize their need, knowing that human society cannot exist without just laws. The Hukim, he insists, however, are not divine decrees without reason. They are laws whose reasons were not revealed, and admittedly, some foolish people may be inclined to reject them. They are indeed royal decrees, but in the same sense that a king who is wise in the conduct of his realm knows the need and the benefit of the laws which he promulgates, yet he deems it best not to make the facts known to the people, with the exception of his sage advisors. The RamBan critique notwithstanding, it should be pointed out that though Rashi appears to have taken a strictly literalist position regarding the mitzvot, upon closer scrutiny, it is a more equivocal stand than is at first apparent. Although he maintains that the commandments ought to be accepted as tokens of submission to the sovereignty of God, he does not expressly deny that reasons known to God do in fact exist. Even the Hukim then would be conceived of not as irrational but rather as superrational precepts. It would seem, moreover, that the stricture against inquiring after reasons is directed primarily to the Hukim. He does not specifically forbid reflective speculation as to the reasons for the other commandments. Indeed, any more adamant position would be at variance with the tenor of the rabbinical statements to the contrary. Although Nahmanides accepts the characterization of the mitzvot essentially as given by the sages, he is generally not as restrictive in his definition of the term hok, believing that its meaning is determined by the scriptural context. Thus, diverging from the rabbinical view, he offers his own interpretation of the verse. There he made for them a statute, hok, and an ordinance, contending that prior to revelation of the law at Sinai, the Israelites had not received any laws. He maintains that at Marah, the mountain, they were given guidance as to the custom which they were to follow and the proper manner in which they should conduct themselves under the trying conditions of life in the wilderness. They were taught to trust in God, to heed the counsel of elders, to love their fellow man, modesty, peaceful relations, and general ethical conduct. The next section is called Mitzvot are of intrinsic worth. On the whole, Nahmanides tends to reject the historical approach in his explanation of the mitzvot, as is amply demonstrated by his discussion of the meaning of sacrifices, where he takes issue with Maimonides. The mitzvot are possessed of intrinsic worth and imbued with inherent sanctity. They reflect divine concern for man in the preservation of his physical well-being and in the prohibition of certain foods which are detrimental to his health. And they aim at the development of his moral and spiritual character by educating him in ethical and religious principles and by helping him to be ever mindful of his commitment to his faith. Prior to reading this paragraph, I would have said I probably was more of the rationalistic approach that the Rambam or Maimonides used, but if this paragraph sums up the Ramban's view, then I think I may be switching camps. Thus, the mitzvah of tefillin, those are the boxes that we place on our forehead and on our arm, which directs that a scroll bearing the account of the Exodus from Egypt and the fundamental doctrines of Judaism be placed next to one's heart and mind, serves as a constant reminder of the unity of God, which is the root of faith and the divine command and divine retribution. Similarly, one who places a mezuzah, that's the box on the doorpost, containing a scroll inscribed with the verses of Shema upon his doorpost, acknowledges thereby God's creation of the world, his omniscience, his providence, and loving kindness, and professes belief in prophecy and in the principles of the Torah. The Ten Commandments, the RamBan notes, are comprised of 5 devoted to the honor of God and 5 which provide for man's personal need and social welfare, the latter enabling the maintenance of a peaceful and well-ordered society. Apart from their significance as social laws or as testimonies to the manifold manifestations of divinity, Nachmanides takes many of the commandments to be possessed of mystical, Kabbalistic meanings, as he intimates, for example, the case of sacrifices and the laws of Shemitah in the Jubilee year. In the Jubilee year. Whatever their apparent or deeper meaning, it is through the mitzvot that the Jew is bidden to hallow the name of God, and if need be, to accept martyrdom on their account in the supreme act of Kiddush Hashem, or blessing of God. So next time we're going to move into the philosophy portion of this, which is unfortunately kind of my weakness. I wish my friend would read this for me and speak on it for me instead. But we'll learn something together. And the next section, page 37, is towards a philosophy of mitzvot, philosophical perspectives. Hope to see you then. Everybody have a good week. Stay warm, stay safe, and shalom. Thank you for joining me.